Hello viewers, welcome to Newsweek South Asia, a show where we will provide you fresh insights into South Asia's geopolitical, strategic and security situation. Let's begin the show with the headlines first. Sectarian tensions leave dozens dead in northwest Pakistan. Suicide attack in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa claims 12 lives. And families protest forced disappearances amid state crackdown in Balochistan. In Pakistan's northwest Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, the spectre of sectarian violence looms large. Once a region of historical tribal coexistence, it is now gripped by deadly attacks targeting Shia Muslims. Recently, a horrifying incident claimed 38 lives when armed gunmen ambushed two convoys of Shia pilgrims in the Khurram district. Women, children and even police escorts were among the victims, as extremist factions orchestrated yet another coordinated strike to deepen the already entrenched sectarian divide. A report. Sectarian conflict between Shia and Sunni extremist groups has deep roots in Pakistan, but the violence has become more acute and deadly in recent years. In the latest attack, two passenger vans travelling through Lower Khurram's district's Ochad area were ambushed by armed assailants. The convoy, mostly comprising Shia Muslims from Parachinar, was under the protection of police and military personnel. Yet, as it entered Sunni-majority villages, militants struck, killing 38 people and injuring 11 others. Disturbing footage circulating on social media reveals the aftermath: bloodied bodies, destroyed vehicles and anguished survivors. The Khurram district, bordering Afghanistan, has become a flashpoint where tribal animosities and sectarian strife are aggravated by external influences. The Pakistani military's actions in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa have drawn significant criticism.
They have realized that since 1979, the Punjabi Army of Pakistan has played a very dirty game in Pakhtun belt, both side of Durand line. And now, today, if we see the political leadership of Pakhtuns is PTI, which is against Pakistan Army. Then you have PTM, which has emerged as the only grassroots political party and rights party under Manzoor Pashtun, the PTM Pakhtun Tahaffuz movement. And then historically ANP of Bacha Khan. So all these Pakhtun leaderships and Pakhtun parties have realized that Punjabi army has played a dirty game and they have become the biggest victim of terrorism created by Pakistan army. So today whatever is happening in KP is nothing new.
Over the years, the army has collaborated with various tribal factions to maintain control in volatile areas. However, many of these groups harbor Sunni extremist sympathies, further deepening the divide between Sunni and Shia communities. Rather than fostering stability, these alliances have emboldened sectarian militias. The rise of terrorist groups like the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan (TTP) and the Hafiz Gul Bahadur faction has created a dangerous environment where violence is used as a tool of dominance. This growing militarization of sectarianism has left civilians trapped in an unending cycle of fear and survival.
In Balochistan now, Pakhtun issue has been a headache of Pakistan army, and this is called karma, because Pakistan always created terrorist groups, especially from these Pakhtuns, to terrorize people of India And now, after creating so many terrorist groups to create terrorism in India and Afghanistan, today they are paying the price, the Pakistan army, by creating terrorist groups. And it will not be easy for Pakistan army to control them.
Despite the Pakistan government's assurances of peace, the ground reality remains grim. The influence of militant groups with ties to the Afghan Taliban has seeped into Pakistan, exploiting sectarian tensions for their own agendas. For extremist factions, the division between Sunni and Shia communities serves as a powerful weapon to destabilize the region further. The Shia minority, already vulnerable, has become a frequent target in this relentless conflict. Their plight symbolizes the broader challenges facing Pakistan, a country grappling with radicalization, fractured governance, and an inability to protect its citizens from rising extremism. Pakistan continues to face the repercussions of its long-standing policy of nurturing extremist groups, with its own security forces now becoming frequent targets of escalating militant violence. The latest strategy unfolded in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, where a suicide bomber rammed an explosive-laden vehicle into a joint security checkpost, leaving a trail of devastation. Here's the full story.
On November 20th, Pakistan's volatile Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province was once again rocked by terror. A suicide bomber attacked a joint security checkpost in Malikhel Bannu district, detonating an explosive-laden vehicle. The blast caused the collapse of a portion of the perimeter wall and severely damaged the surrounding infrastructure. The result, 12 fatalities, including 10 Pakistan Army soldiers and the 2 members of the Frontier Constabulary. The Inter-Services Public Relations, the media wing of the Pakistan Army, claimed that the attackers were neutralized, with 6 terrorists killed in the ensuing gun battle. However, this incident underscores a harsh reality: Pakistan's spiraling descent into chaos, fueled by the very extremist elements it once supported. This latest attack comes on the heels of another catastrophic blast in Quetta, Balochistan, where 25 people, including 14 Pakistan Army soldiers, lost their lives at a railway station earlier this month.
So there's been another terror attack in Pakistan in Bannu. What's new? Well, nothing really. Pakistan has been warned about this. Pakistan knew about this. It's not like they're figuring it out now. Remember Hillary Clinton's statement: you can't grow snakes in your backyard and only expect them to bite the neighbors. But this is what Pakistan has consciously chosen. They are such a militarized state with such a military prime focus that they can't think of anything else. And as I understand it, they're caught in their own trap. They know they're trapped. They know they can't stop this. They don't have the state capacity to stop it. At one point they did. But now the entire terror apparatus, because they were basically running a terror zoo, the amount of wildlife in that zoo has gone beyond anybody's control. And this is what you get. They are trying to get out of it, so to say, but they don't know how to get out of it. And it's not like they're trying very hard to get out of it.
The Center for Research and Security Studies has reported a staggering 90% rise in violence in Pakistan during the third quarter of 2024 alone. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in particular, has borne the brunt of this surge. But this growing insecurity isn't new. In January last year, Peshawar witnessed one of its worst attacks when a suicide bomber disguised as a policeman killed over 100 people, mostly police officers, in a mosque. The attack was claimed by the Hafiz Gul Bahadur faction of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, a group that has intensified its operations since the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan in 2021. Pakistan initially celebrated the Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan hoping for strategic advantages. But this gamble has backfired spectacularly. Instead of curbing the TTP, the Afghan Taliban has provided ideological and logistical support to these extremists, as confirmed by a United Nations report.
How did the groups like the TTT strengthen operations against the Pakistani state? Well, it was a very deliberate decision on part of the Pakistani state to ignore all these people during the Afghanistan, during the American presence in Afghanistan. And what ended up happening was, every time the Americans would give them proof that there was collusion between the state and the TTP to carry out attacks within Pakistan, what would happen is they would dilute their own security forces, make them more radicalized, recruit more Pashtuns and things like that. Now, Pashtun's first loyalty is always to his tribe. It's not going to be to the state or whatever, especially when your notion of a state itself is so amorphous. So that's what's been happening. And they thought they were being very smart. As usual, Pakistanis always think they're being very smart. Clearly, in this case, they weren't terribly smart, and now they're essentially reaping the rewards of what they sowed.
Islamabad's expectation that the Taliban would help control the TTP has proven to be a dangerous misjudgment. Pakistan's strategy of fostering extremism as a geopolitical tool has now backfired, plunging the country into a spiral of violence it seems ill-equipped to counter. The question remains, how long will Pakistan continue to reap what it has sown before it takes definitive steps to dismantle the terror networks it once nurtured?
In Balochistan, a province long marked by political unrest and human rights violations, families are taking to the streets to protest the ongoing issue of forced disappearances. Relatives of two young men who went missing earlier this month have staged a sit-in protest in the town of Turbat, demanding justice. However, their efforts to seek accountability have been met with state repression, highlighting the ongoing struggle for basic freedoms in Pakistan's southwestern region. Here's more on the situation from Balochistan.
In Balochistan's Turbat city, a protest is quietly growing as the families of two Baloch youths, Sherjan Darvesh Baloch and Irshad, gather to demand answers about their sudden and unexplained disappearances. The two men went missing in early November, adding their names to a long list of missing persons in Balochistan, a province that has suffered from decades of political instability and military crackdowns. Sherjan and Irshad's families are not alone in their grief. Enforced disappearances have become a grim reality for many in this region, as Baloch activists, students and intellectuals are often abducted by Pakistan's security forces. In this case, despite their peaceful sit-in, the protesters have faced a hostile response. Local authorities, supported by the Frontier Corps, have set up roadblocks to prevent the families from marching to the district commissioner's office while threatening further action if they persist.
The main problem why each and every government in Pakistan is failed to recover or do something in favor of missing person and forced disappearances, because the people, they've been missing, they are disappeared. This is not the policy of government, this is the policy of the state. And as concerned as the government is always came on the shoulder of the same state. This is true in Pakistan. Most of the government elected people, they are not elected by people. They are selected by the same elements, same institute, same organization. I mean, Pakistan ISI and Pakistan Army, they are involved in disappearances and enforced disappearances. This is the reality. And furthermore, You can see even the Pakistani judiciary is silenced and cannot do anything in favor of missing person and for disappearances. Because Pakistan ISI and Pakistan Army keep them blackmailing.
The situation in Balochistan is part of a broader and alarming trend of human rights abuses that have escalated since the Pakistani government's heavy-handed military operations in the region. Human rights groups like the PANK, Human Rights Wing of the Baloch National Movement, has repeatedly raised concerns about the state's response to protests and the growing number of enforced disappearances. The figures paint a chilling picture of the scale of these abuses. In October 2024 alone, 110 cases of enforced disappearances and 6 extrajudicial killings were documented, primarily targeting students and activists. These figures include many cases of young students and activists who are believed to be targeted due to their opposition to the state's policies or their advocacy for Baloch rights. The Pakistani military has long been accused of using forced disappearances as a tool to quell dissent in Balochistan. The province, which is rich in natural resources, has been a hotbed of insurgency and ethnic strife for decades.
So, with the involvement of China in Balochistan in the recent past, what we have seen and witnessed that the Pakistani army has intensified its genocidal policies in Balochistan. They will start not only abducting the Baloch people, the Baloch political workers, the Baloch human rights activists, Baloch students, but they've also started targeting them in fake encounters, and they've targeted a huge number of people. And all of that was happening while Pakistani army was creating the pathway. They were paving way for China's so-called economic corridor, which is in reality a military corridor. Their real motive behind it is to control Gwadar port, that means to control the region.
The impact of these disappearances extends beyond the individuals who are taken. Families in Balochistan are left to live in constant fear, unsure whether their loved ones will return or remain lost to their shadows of the state's military operations. The Pakistani government has failed to provide any meaningful answers to the families of the disappeared, leaving them in a state of prolonged uncertainty and emotional anguish. Locally, the families in Turbat are adamant about their right to seek justice. Despite the constant harassment and pressure from authorities, they continue to call for the safe return of Sherjan and Irshad. The protest is a stark reminder of the broader human rights crisis in Balochistan, where many have been silenced by fear, intimidation, and violence.
Let us now turn our attention to the harrowing plight of Afghan women under the Taliban's oppressive regime. Since the Taliban's return to power, Afghan women have faced relentless restrictions, from being banned from education and work to being denied basic freedoms. Today we have with us Dipankar Sen Gupta, a geopolitical expert, to help us understand the gravity of the situation and its broader implications. Professor Sen Gupta, thank you for being with us today. We will delve into critical questions about the Taliban's latest decree, banning women from praying aloud in each other's presence, its impact on Afghan society, and what the international community can do to address these violations. Hello, sir. Welcome to the show. So, what is your reaction to the Taliban's latest decree banning women from praying aloud in each other's presence?
This particular decree by the Taliban, ruling by the Taliban, goes beyond whatever they did in their first rule from 96 to 2001. We were told this was a gentler and kinder Taliban. This is something that the Pakistani state under Imran Khan told us, that their treatment of women would be far better than it was last time. This was what very many people in the West, in the United States, also told us, that this was not the same crude Taliban as before. This was a different Taliban. Now, these promises about better treatment of women were made not by the Taliban but by their apologists to the rest of the world. The Taliban never made such promises, and the Taliban cleverly have gone about implementing their misogynist, anti-women agenda in a systematic way. They did not do everything that they wanted in the first year itself, but over the years what we have seen is the gradual disappearance of the Afghan women, first from schools, then from offices, then from the streets, and now this visual disappearance is also followed by the disappearance of their sound. This is what the Taliban has implemented in its 4 years of existence, and they never said that they were not going to do this. The rest of the world has been fooled, and this is the tragedy that we are living with today.
How do these restrictions align with or contradict Islamic principles and Afghan traditions?
I think when it comes to Islamic tradition, this is completely uncalled for. I don't think there is any serious Islamic theologian or scholar who will recognize these particular edicts as being part of Islam. When it comes to Afghan society, let us face this. This is the Afghan society which till 1991 was one of the leaders in women's emancipation. Now, it is true that in the rural areas, women were still in parda. But these kind of rulings is something that Afghanistan has never seen before. So this is a curious and poisonous mixture of what these Afghan Taliban scholars learnt in Pakistan in those madrasas aided and abetted by CIA money and the then Saudi Arab scholarship that basically poisoned these people, made them misogynist, and now is creating Afghanistan into what it is. This is not Islam. There is no school of Islam which will recognize these rulings for what they are.
What message does the Taliban's treatment of women send to the international community?
So the message that the Taliban is sending is very, very clear. The Taliban doesn't care. The Taliban also realizes, with good reason, is that given the fact that the rest of the international community is fed up, tired of the intestine Afghan problems, given that there is some sort of stability in Afghanistan, that the Taliban practically rule the roost out there, the Taliban may do whatever they want inside Afghanistan as long as Afghanistan's problems do not spill over to the rest of the world. The rest of the world will allow the Taliban to do whatever it wants. And therefore the Taliban is doing whatever it wants, and part of its agenda is this misogynist agenda which ensure that women have absolutely no role to play anywhere.
How do these measures affect Afghanistan's social structure and the future of its younger generation, particularly girls?
Look, what the Taliban have done is to disempower in gradual steps half of its population. First, disempower them. Secondly, make them invisible. Now you are trying to make them soundless also. And this has a reason. You see, the Afghan women also have been organizing themselves, trying to create space for themselves. How do you create space for themselves? By coming together, uniting, talking, etc. Now, one of the things that the Afghan government has done is to make even this impossible. Now, what kind of a society are you creating? The kind of society that you are creating is where half the Afghan population, the male population, think that the disappearance of the women from public spaces is absolutely normal. We see the impact of this already in Western countries. In many Western countries, much of the violence that you see against women are by immigrant groups, and unfortunately, Afghan men are a disproportionately large population, 5 fraction of such cases. Why? Because during their earlier avatar under the Taliban and before that, during the chaos of the Mujahideen, these people were not used to seeing women occupy public spaces.
So how do you view the international community's response to the worsening plight of Afghan women? Has it been adequate?
The international community is doing absolutely nothing about women in Afghanistan. The international community is sick and tired of Afghanistan. There is an Afghan fatigue. After 2001, the international community thought that the Taliban were done with, and the international community poured in billions of dollars into Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the Afghan leaders who basically came into the governance of Afghanistan, the Karzai administrations and subsequently what followed, they took billions of dollars, they looted Afghanistan, and they did nothing about the governance of Afghanistan. So they lost credibility in Afghanistan, and later by rigging elections, even the democratic process in Afghanistan was seriously undermined. As a result of which the Taliban have been able to take over Afghanistan's very, very easily. So the international community, I think, mistakenly thinks as long as Afghanistan's problems are contained within Afghanistan, the rest of the world does not have to bother. This is an assessment I do not agree with.
Thank you so much for your insight, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We'll be back next week with more news, views and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@anin.com. This is Shivangi Mishra signing off on behalf of the entire production team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.